He was nice.
Wasn't he great?
Yeah, really good.
All right, still to come. Dr. Scott joins us next to open the doors on another This Morning Pet Clinic. We'll see you after that, after this short break.
Welcome back to This Morning. Now, coming up, we meet the family from the award-winning documentary Torn, an emotional film about a father who was tragically lost in a deadly avalanche and what happened next.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
First, with a shortage of appointments right now, Dr. Scott has agreed to open a special this morning, pet surgery, to help you struggling to see your pet.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You're very welcome.
And we've had so many people
sort of what he does
get in
every
touch.
week.
Yeah, exactly. We've had so many people get in touch, Dr. Scott. But before we start, there's a story hitting the headlines. What's it all about?
So, the Norwegian government has actually banned the selective breeding of British Bulldogs and Cavalier King Charles Spaniels in Norway. Now, this is quite a tricky one because from a veterinary perspective, we do have grave concerns about what's called brachycephalic dogs or flat-faced dogs and the impact that it has on their welfare. So for a dog like that, you can see very narrow nostrils and but virtually no nose. So all the structures in the nasal passages are shunted back. So they have an elongated soft palate, which means that they struggle to breathe, they overheat, and also because of their shape, they also struggle with a lot of arthritis. They tend to also be overweight because you can't exercise them too much. King Charles Spaniels have such an abnormally shaped head that can actually pressurise the brainstem and lead to a neurological condition called syringomyelia. Both of those conditions have been brought about because of breed standards. And so all kennel clubs around the world have to take responsibility for the fact that they set the breed standards. The breed standards have become so extreme that these animals are struggling, they're uncomfortable. In a lot of cases, they need surgical correction to simply behave and react normally.
So when you say breed standards, what do you mean by that? Because if a King Charles Spaniel mates with another King Charles Spaniel, like, are you saying that's completely wrong? Or are there ways that you can... So if I have one in Ireland and it breeds with one in England, would that be a different gene pool? Like, it's...
So what it is the breed standards is basically each breed association sets the way that their breed should look. Now, these breeds have changed in the way they look over the years. And certainly British Bulldogs used to be a little bit taller, not quite so tank-like, and certainly didn't have this very flat nose. And it's become more and more and more extreme. So
how do you go about rectifying that?
Well, what we have to, it has to start from grassroots. So it has to be a real want from all breeders to go, you know what we want is for these dogs not to just look a certain way, but also to be healthy. We need to breed them to be able to at least breathe
That should
properly.
be the first priority.
It sounds so cruel as well.
Yes, and unfortunately it is. But what happens is when the structure is set up that they need to look a certain way, then the breeders are encouraged to breed that way. And there are commercial advantages because if you then are kennel club registered, you're more likely to get more for your puppies. So what Norway has done, though, is by banning the breeders, they're not actually... It's almost like, you know, you can't work through a problem unless you can have a discussion at a table.
Yeah.
And by banning the breeders, what they're doing is saying, well, we're allowing dodgy breeders to come in and infiltrate with even worse genetic lines. So...
Yeah.
I think that is problematic. And
really like the table stuff, essentially.
Well, instead, what we need to do is to work with breeders and work with all the kennel clubs who do need to take responsibility to try and actually breed the animals they love to be healthy. But at the moment, certainly from a veterinary perspective, when I see these dogs walk through the door, the amount of times I have to then, I have to sort out this nose, so they get a plastic surgery on the nose. I have to then chop out the back of their soft palate, just simply to be able to get them to breathe properly. It isn't right. And we do need to make some major changes. And certainly with Crufts coming up in March, I'm glad to see that there are some initiatives like the respiratory function grading scheme that Kennel Club has set in place, which basically means that we get the dogs in, we listen to their chests, and then we get them to exercise and then listen to them again. And if there's a certain level where they're sounding literally like a broken washing machine, they'd be classed as, say, a grade 3. And then we look at the parents and go, OK, if that sum adds up to 6 or 5, then you shouldn't be breeding them.
Yeah.
And that's really great because now what we need to do is go, OK, they need to look a certain way, but they also need to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that will take process and working together, not
How does that work
what's happening in Norway.
legislated? So what's the body that can set that? Like, how can you put those rules in place?
So certainly, from a veterinary standpoint, we can only set guidelines. The government is the one that sets the legislation, and the Kennel Club are the ones that then set the breed standards. So that's why it does need to be a collaborative effort. We need to be able to work together to try and avoid this, because at the root of it is everyone should love dogs and want the best for them. And so that does mean if we can sit down and work out this together, then I think that's the best way to go. To completely ban breeders in Norway from breeding them, unfortunately, it's just going to allow worse genetic lines to come into the situation. But what's upsetting is that these dogs and Cavalier King Charles Spaniels have possibly the best personalities of dogs.
Aww.
So if we could just harness how wonderful they are as dogs and just make future generations be healthier, I'd be very happy.
Are there any other breeds it's likely to happen to?
Yes, so pugs as well. They're very flat-faced. French bulldogs. And a lot of people do. And the reason that we do is because as humans, we relate to animals that look like us, which is very simplistic, but we do. We like pandas, we like koalas, we like anything with a flat face and big eyes, because we're so sycophantic.
All day.
But no, because basically we
want
like
them to look like us.
Exactly.
It's so bad, isn't it?
And once you start realising that, you go, well, that's ridiculous, because they are an animal and we're humans. And when it comes to dogs, when we're trying to encourage them to look like us, we're giving them problems that they don't deserve to have. Right. And we do need to try and iron that out.
I agree with you, Dr.
Listen,
Scott.
let's get through some
We've got loads.